This is Karl Buechner from Earth Crisis, Apocalypse Tribe, and Freya, and you're watching the Vulgar Display of Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Vulgar Display of Podcast, live from the Barn Studio. You got the Mox here, and I'm joined with a crew today. We have Karl Buechner from Earth Crisis and Freya, Keith Ward, and Jeremy Mueller, and for this new book that's coming out, The Unraveling the Council of Crows. Fellas, how are we today?
Doing good. We are well, sir. How are you?
Doing really well. Thanks for joining us today. Karl, just first off the jump, we're a metal podcast, and we are big fans, been fans of Earth Crisis and your work for a long time. So, again, we appreciate you joining us, and just wanted to mention that right off the get-go.
All righty. Thank you for that.
But we are here because we have a super cool project. We were talking a little bit off air. This thing is neat. You guys have a book coming out, The Unraveling the Council of Crows, and it's coming out actually on 5/20/25, and also you have an exclusive number hard copy edition releasing direct from Third World Studios, dropping on Earth Day. Tell us a little bit how this came together. Karl, I hear maybe this was sort of born out of a short story that you had previously worked on.
Yep, this was based off of exactly that, a short story that I wrote. And we took that, and thanks to Jeremy's devotion and talent and Keith's devotion and talent, we turned that little story into a world together. And we added layer after layer, year after year. And just to give you a little background, Keith was an agented stand-up comedian. He is an English teacher. And Jeremy is an artisan and a poet, as well as a short story writer. And Keith is a short story writer. And both these guys have done a lot of traveling and worn a lot of hats, just like I have. So we all came to this fresh. And we all grew together as writers and collaborators. And we turned that short story into a book, and that book became a series. And this is the first of 3.
Yeah, and you mentioned the humor. It seems like a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek and a lot of symbolism in this. And Jeremy, I want to quote you here. You mentioned adventure is always better with a bit of humor, and there's definitely some of that in there. What is humor? How does humor play a part in this?
Well, I think so. When we set out to write a story, especially a middle grade story, I think for us, like me being a parent, Karl being a parent, Keith being a teacher,
and an uncle.
And an uncle. When we watch movies and read stories with our kids, our nieces and nephews, it's always easier to watch those stories or read those books when there's a lot of humor, especially like stuff like that's a little like adult oriented, so they kind of keep the grasp the intention. So we wanted to make sure that through line was like through the story. I love, like, when I remember watching Shrek when I was younger, but then watching it as an adult, it hit on a whole different level for me. And I just wanted to make sure that we could do that with this story. That makes sense.
Absolutely. And Keith, I want to ask you, who is this book for?
I mean, that's a beautiful question. So, our target audience is true middle grades. It's a little younger than the YA audience, so probably 8 to 12. But I guess we probably book it 8 years old to 99, right? If you're
for sure.
If you're a fan of fables, or if you're a fan of earth and animal rights without a heavy hand, this is definitely for you. Also, if you just want to have, I think, so one of the things that's really funny is that Karl and I both perform. Karl continues to perform, and I'm much more behind the scenes writing these days. But there's a character in this groundhog who you'll meet, and I think in a lot of ways it's a bit of a confession for both of us about the nature of performance. And if you've ever been on a stage, when you meet Boswell for the first time, I think you'll learn a lot about what it means to pick up a mic and succeed and fail.
And Keith also plays guitar, and Jeremy also plays bass. So, I mean, we're all musicians. We're all musicians.
And that brings me to my next question. How do you guys see like music and storytelling working together on some of these important issues that obviously you guys are committed to and you think need awareness brought upon them?
I think for me, being a lyricist over the last 30 plus years, it's taught me how to boil things down to their essence and make a point as quickly as I can, but hopefully as vividly as possible. And it's the same for, Keith with writing jokes to perform on stage for an audience. And the same for Jeremy with writing short stories and playing bass. It's like we have a short amount of time to get an idea across. And the beauty of writing this book series is we've got a lot of canvas to paint. So we can get into a lot of depth.
Also, I think Karl's being a little bit modest. For fans of Karl's purely, there are I was just reviewing the book yesterday. We were looking at the hardcover for press, and there are no fewer than 4 songs that this groundhog performs. And Karl wrote the lyrics, and inside the text, you actually get like a pure lyrical page or 2 that's just brand new lyrics set inside this universe that Karl penned, and we chose to keep them as lyrics for this budding performer widely for children, but he really does want to break into the next level and just hasn't done it in this book. But I think that's another exciting thing too, is like if you've been following this dude's career, you get to see a whole different level of lyric and fantasy that comes through in that writing too. So there's actually poetry in the book.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, you have to.
And I'm interested in like the logistics, because are all 3 of you co-writers? Is that how it's like, is that the title?
Yeah.
And if so, how did that happen? Like logistically, would somebody start a piece and then kind of work on it together? Would you all 3 get in the room, or tell us a little bit how like it actually came together?
Well, that's a fun process.
That's a key question.
Yeah. So Jeremy called me one night real late and was like, I want to write a story. And I was like, me too. And a few weeks later, I met Karl, and Karl pitched this idea, and we ended up, I thought we were going to write some kind of like hard hitman story or something, and then Karl pitched this story about a couple of squirrels, and it kind of took me by surprise. And then what we kind of like settled in. So this has been about 10 years to the day since we met and started working. And we kind of invented this, we call it the 3-tier process. So one of us will have a baseline idea and then scribble notes. It'll go to a second party. They'll refine, turn it into text. And then typically it comes to the third of us. And that is really for refinement, mechanics, and then fine tuning. And then all of us will meet together and review the chapter together and go notes, and then review. Like I'll typically take the final edit and then bring it back on a second week, and we'll look at the polished version. And then that bore just about 500 pages that we thought were brilliant. And then we got an editor who reminded us that it is not. And then we pared it down to about 283 pages. So that was the real process, was getting it manageable for an audience to to consume.
Yeah, we've been meeting together for, well, at the very least once a week, twice a week for the past 10 years. In this room, not specifically in this room, but in a bunch of different rooms, writing this story. It's been an amazing journey. It's been so much fun. It really has been.
And I think it's important to say right here from the get-go that, we wrote this book together. We built this world together, just like a band writes songs and puts an album into, brings the idea from a vision into a reality. So we're at a point now where I think we write with one voice from this world. And Jeremy's written short stories, Keith's written short stories, I've written short stories. And I think, as time goes along, I don't think our readers will be able to tell who wrote what.
It is funny, like we can't even tell anymore who wrote what.
Yeah,
we'll read the story, and more often than not, which one of us wrote that? And we can't remember who wrote what, or it's pretty cool.
Right, because we'll build a basis, but then each one of us will, there's 3 cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Each one of us will add ingredients into the stew. And we've got a lot of short stories that are going to debut on our website as this year progresses.
I'm always interested, we talked to a lot of musicians, obviously, but even just art in general. I'm always interested in when the artist knows when the project is done, because that can be difficult sometimes, right? Sometimes it's paralysis by analysis. Just you're changing every single word, or every single, sentence needs to change. So
That's a great question.
When did you guys know that it was actually complete? And was it a full, did we all agree that was the case, or?
I think I don't, to be honest with you, like every time I read it, you can go back and be like, oh, this is a great idea. Like, I think you have to make the decision at some point just to be like, I'm done with this, because you could always go back and find it. It's just like writing a song or anything. Like, it's like, or cooking, like, this could use a little bit more pepper, or a little bit, but then, like, when is it too much? Or we decided, I think a couple, I can't remember when.
I can answer this question real quick and simple.
Do it.
The copy of the book that you see on the screen now is our artist review copy. And I think it was less than a week ago, Karl sent me 17 notes on things that he wanted to change. And I got in touch with our publisher, and he said he created a tapestry of profanity that is still floating around somewhere. And I really did twist his arm, and I was like, hey, listen, some of these are important and some of them are less important. Yeah. And I'll tell you, we finally realized that it was done when we were told, if you call us one more time, we're going to drive 8 hours and do some homicide. And then we were like, oh, okay, yeah, we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to anger DeVito any more than we have. Third World has done a great job helping us and being encouraging and finding quality editors, and helping us approve and finalize the whole artistic direction of the visual aspect of this project. So there's a debt of gratitude to him.
Jeremy, I want to ask you, a couple of days ago, you posted a beautifully written piece on your Instagram about Moby, and him putting sort of his stamp of approval on this. What did that mean to you? And can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, I mean, it was huge. I mean, like, just being like, for someone like me to have someone like, of that caliber kind of, back the story. He'd read it and give us this beautiful pulp quote. Like, it's hard to put into words. It really is. And we definitely owe him a debt of gratitude. He's been very encouraging, but not just Moby, but Keegan Kuhn, Andy Hurley from Fall Out Boy, Ingrid Newkirk, all of them have been amazing.
That's for sure. And, one thing that we probably should have said at the beginning is that this is a fantasy adventure for middle grade readers. I mean, Keith got to that. But it has strong pro-animal rights and environmental themes, but it is a fast-paced adventure story. It is. And I think each of the characters, I guess Keith did cover it. They're different parts of our personalities. They're different parts of our youth, or
our family members.
Yeah, family members, that kind of stuff. So I feel like when I read it, I think it delivers the message, but at the same time, it is fun.
I've asked this question before, but how much of art is just an extension of you?
I think if it's authentic, it's 100% coming from the creator. It's their belief system, it's their experiences, it's their hopes and their goals.
I mean, in the process of working on this, each of us has lost someone dear in one way or another. And the book is dedicated to Jeremy's mom, who passed recently, my dad, who passed about 3 years ago. And the day he died, his body was still upstairs, and I received the contract for this book. And there's a couple of moments in the story where you have these emotional experiences through the character. And I think the reason that they work is that I think we learn to cry and to laugh through these animals as they went through their process. And there's lines that my dad spoke. I know that there's lines that Karl and Jeremy's family have spoken to them. And for us, it really is. I think you do get the three of us very clearly. And I hope the best of us, when we set out to write this, we curse a lot, and I'm going to try to avoid that.
Yes, let's not.
We talked about it this way. We all have a very different relationship to how we understand our role in the environment. We're not all the same person. But what we did agree on is that in theory, you could crap on your dining room table if that was what you so desired. It is a choice you could make. We just believe that there are better places to crap. And our story is really looking at the earth and suggesting that maybe we could have a healthier, more robust, honest relationship with the marble that holds us. Yeah. And I think that's sort of the love letter in it. It's less about preaching and more about, hey, what do you think?
Yeah. I think also too, like with the writing of the characters, to go back to that, it does make it, I don't want to say easy, but when art comes through, like when we do write from the level that we did, it does make it a little easier. You just hope that translates, because the humor, the sarcasm, the loss, the love, all of that is deeply rooted in the three of us. And we wrote the way we'd want to read a story, and we just hope that it does translate.
Talk about, this is one part of a 3 series, right? So talk about what the future plans are for the releases.
Yeah, so right now we're really excited. We're we get to do this hardcover edition that'll be limited, numbered, and signed on Earth Day, and our plan is to release every Earth Day for the next 3 years. And I think Karl again was just 25% too modest. We also have a prequel story that's going to go back and tell the story behind the story. So when you meet our characters, human beings are gone. They don't exist anymore, and these animals live in we call them bipeds, but in human infrastructure. And they kind of talk about us the way you and I might talk about Greek or Roman or Chinese gods and monsters, and they're trying to piece together a past that's only partially theirs through their perspective. And the goal is to continue their story through a 3-act arc, and then ultimately to go back and show how they became who they were as a result of everything from vivisection and animal testing, even just to like the culling of crows, which is a thing in our region, and then looking at how those things could have implications on the notion of sentience in animals other than ourselves.
I have this theory. I don't know how much of a theory it actually is, but I mean, times have been pretty bleak for a lot of these past years. And, 2 of my favorite passions, and we talked about comedy on here. I love stand-up comedy. I love comedy, and I obviously love music. And I think, to me, art right now during bleak times is so important, because it helps us understand ourselves a little bit better. It helps us understand circumstances a little bit better. And it helps us, at least maybe I'm projecting here, but it helps us be able to kind of express ourselves a little bit better. Is this project, what you guys are doing, is it a little bit of that?
Yeah, it's beyond self-expression. We really are trying to forward a message that kindness and compassionate choices, despite sacrifice, despite the difficulties, are always going to be the smartest route to take. And we're trying to call attention to things that need remedies. And in some ways, when the characters in our book are discussing how humans treated them and the natural world, it is very unflattering. But at the same time, it's not a condemnation. It's meant to be corrective.
Yeah, we've talked about it for a long time. If you know that, in A Christmas Carol, the Charles Dickens story, and Scrooge is visited by the ghost of Christmas future, and it confronts his own death. And then he begs this ghost, he says, please tell me that these shadows can still be changed. And I think that's the heart of our book, is that, hey, look at global future, and let's all just take a moment and beg the question, can this future, can this present be altered by compassion and love and understanding? And we've come to believe it.
Absolutely, yeah. If we reroute away from the compete, conquer, exploit mindset that we were all, raised to hold and and live by in our, corporate, multinational, conglomerate controlled world, things can be a lot different.
Join here with Karl, Keith, and Jeremy, authors of The Unraveling, The Council of Crows, and this is the Vulgar Display of Podcast. Karl, my co-host, would beat me up if I didn't ask a few music questions.
Let's prevent that beating right now.
Yeah, please, because I could probably take both of them. But anyway, I mean, obviously with Earth Crisis and your music and your art, you've used your music to challenge, norms, societal norms, and alternative perspectives. And it sounds like that's what this project's doing as well. I know the Earth Crisis has a tour coming up in the fall with Judge, Integrity, and Earth, and you guys, and a little bit of East Coast, a little bit of West Coast. Tell us about that tour.
Okay. Well, before that starts, Earth Crisis is going to be in Europe. We're going to England and Western Europe, and then I'm going to stay there. And then my other band, Freya, is going to do a tour of Eastern Europe. Then we come back in the fall, and it's precisely what you said. Earth Crisis is going to be playing shows with legendary New York straight edge band Judge, legendary Cleveland hardcore band Integrity, and we just did a split with them on Holy Mountain. They did a beautiful job with the vinyl. It's 3 colors, and that came out, I think, about a week or 2 ago. So we're going to be on the road with those bands, East Coast and West Coast, and we're already starting to book a couple more shows because some of them have sold out in pre-sales.
It's going to be a busy year for you, it sounds like.
For sure, yeah. These last 3-4 years have been busy, and Freya put a record out 2 years ago for anybody that missed it on Upstate label, and it's called Fight as One. We had Freddie Madball do guest vocals, Jamie Hatebreed, and Scott Vogel from Terror and Buried Alive. So, from my perspective, we had the 3 kings of hardcore grace our album with their talent. And that was a pretty momentous thing for me because it was Freya's 20th anniversary. I think Earth Crisis is definitely over 30 at this point, and Freya just turned 20.
Yeah, and that Freya record, it's so good. And I know it was very well received critical acclaim, whatever, but the fans really dug that record.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of shows, and we've played states that we never have before on some of these runs, and we made 3 videos for the album as well.
When guys like me like to sit around and talk about, legendary status, and they use, those kinds of words, and they use your name in the same sentence when they say those things, what kind of feeling does that give you?
Well, it makes me think of the actual legends, and it makes me thankful for, John Joseph from Blood Clot, and for all his books and all he does to promote kindness towards animals and spirituality and just, peace on earth. Or Roger from Agnostic Front, HR from Bad Brains, Ian Mackay from Minor Threat and Fugazi. Like, all those guys have, had their music and their lyrics and just the forcefulness of their personalities. They've had such a positive impact on my life. Like, they gave me hardcore. They gave me everything I have. So much respect to all of them.
Chad here with the Vulgar Display of Podcast. Got the crew on the Zoom right now. Guys, really appreciate your time today. This is an awesome project, and I hope to get the word out even just a little bit more. And it is available everywhere. 5/20, May 20th. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. And then the exclusive numbered hard copy edition releasing through Third World Studios, dropping early for Earth Day. And that's April 22nd. Guys, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.